welcome to our Fane online event. It's a live stream of an interview with Arsene Wenger. If you're watching us live, it's lovely to have you with us. If you're watching on the 48-hour catch-up, I really hope you enjoy the evening. Let's crack on and introduce the man who has written this magnificent book. Ladies and gentlemen, watching online, those of you live with us at the London Palladium, it's Arsene Wenger!
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful welcome. Did you hear they booed me when I came out because it wasn't you? It was difficult for me, very difficult for me. What a pleasure, Arsene, to spend some time with you tonight. We've had lots of questions sent in. You'll be amazed to hear almost all of them are about Arsenal. We'll get to some of those. We'll sort of stitch them into the chat as we go through a very long, a very successful career. And we will get to Arsenal as well, because there's lots to talk about with regards to that. But I wanted to ask you, first of all, about the experience of writing this book. Because as you get to read it, you'll find that you get to know a lot about this man. And you tell us all about your life, right back to the start as well. So the actual, I suppose, the process of writing it, did you enjoy it? Did you find out things about yourself that, you know, you hadn't thought you would share?
I did, in fact, enjoy it, I must say, because I resisted a long time to write the book. And in the end, when in my family I lost my brother, my sister, and I thought maybe I have to leave for people come after me in a family, what happened, you know, before them. And I had as well time and turned the book down for 4 or 5 years. And in the end, I thought maybe it's time. I had time available. And maybe it's time as well to analyze. I arrived at 70. And you start to think, what have I done in my life?
Because you are...
What have I done with my life as well?
Because you have been, for many years, you've been, you know, living this high-octane football life, obsessed with football from a very early age. I wouldn't imagine you've had time to devote the amount of, you know, sat down thinking about it to write a book like this.
I wanted to show 2 things, basically, is that when you're a little boy and you have a passion, life can be bigger than your dream. And I believe it's an important message to all the young people today who grow up in an uncertain world. And the second thing I wanted to share as well, what I've learned from my life with top-level people in top-level sport, the human lessons I've learned, what I've learned about human beings, and that human being can surprise you, sometimes negatively, but as well positively, you know. And our job basically is to say to people, look, my life, my destiny depends on you, but you can do that. And so if you don't experience well to put your fate and destiny in hands of others, you're not very happy in this job.
Okay, well, we look forward to trying to get out of you tonight some of the things that you've learned. But talk about those young people, as you mentioned there. I wanted to take you right back to the start as a young boy growing up in Alsace and listening to football conversations in your parents' bistro and watching and listening other people discuss football. Is that where your passion for the game really started? And what did you learn from watching other people be so passionate about the game at such a young age?
Well, I heard only talk about football because the headquarters of a local club was a disastrous football team. So every day, maybe as a young boy, I listened to these people and I thought subconsciously football is the only thing that matters in life. And after that, it dictated my whole life. And I always, subconsciously for me, it was never a choice between football and all the rest. It was always football. And that's why I don't really know. I knew the intensity of my desire, of my motivation. I didn't know really where it came from. When I started to think about my life, I realized that it must certainly come from that little bistro where people were picking the team for Sunday. And I was so obsessed but I took the mass book to pray God to help us to win the football.
Did it work?
During the games, yes. I had my mass book and I read in Latin the mass to beg God to help us to win the games. We didn't win many.
Nothing changes then. And no. That wasn't a reference to Arsenal. I was talking about generally. General faith reference there in football. Don't Arsene, don't you listen to them. All right, don't listen to them. And you played a lot of football as well as a young man, didn't you? And one of the questions we had in tonight came from a guy called Michael, who said, I think he was being slightly tongue-in-cheek. He said, Arsene, I've seen you be a wonderful manager, but were you any good at the game? So tell us a little bit about the sort of footballer you were and what sort of level you played to. Because you played this, you started as a midfielder, is that right?
I was a midfielder, creative midfielder.
Don't forget the creative.
On the good days. No, it is difficult to imagine. I was born in 1949 in a little village that was agricultural. And it was all about hard work. Football was on Sundays. And I started only to play at the age of 12, 13, because my father created a youth team because people told him, your son is quite good at football. But we had no coach. My first coach was at the age of 19. And somebody from third division saw me play and said, you're a good player, you have to come up. But I had never a coach. So I had my first coach at the age of 19. And then I played third division, second division, finished in Strasbourg by playing a few games in the top league at the age of 29. But I was already coaching. So it is a strange career, because I can't imagine that somebody has never had a coach at the age of 19 today can spend his life in football after. So my life is a little miracle on that front, because I had the luck to meet people my whole life who trusted me and gave me, my boy, you have a chance. I give you a chance. And I believe that life is the meeting of an attitude, a passion, and as well somebody who gives you a chance. And maybe the rest of my life I had always that in my mind. If I can give a chance to somebody, let's do it.
So that was always in your mind going forward?
It was always in my mind.
Other players and signed other players?
Today I'm head of a program at FIFA who is basically based on that. Give every boy in the world a chance to play, not to become a star, but to have the luck to play football with his friends and enjoy it.
So first coach at sort of 18, 19, and then you were, as you said, you were coaching yourself before the age of 30 while you were still playing. Who were your sort of early influences at that time? Either players that you liked to watch and enjoyed watching, or people who were influencing you as a player yourself?
My first influence was a man called Max Hild, who was a manager. He saw me play, and after, he took me to the games, to international games. What I had in my whole life as a player, the managers talked always to me. Did they see something in me that was passion or maybe some talent to analyze a game? I don't know. But he was the first guy, and he encouraged me to become a manager, to become a coach. And at the age of 25, 26 already, I educated younger coaches, for youth teams. And I was already experienced to coach. I created a children's school from 5 to 7. At the time, it didn't exist. So I was always interested in that.
I don't think anyone here will be surprised to hear that when you read the book yourself, Arsene was an innovator at a very early age. So when you were starting to coach at Nancy around the age of sort of 30, is it right you brought a dietitian into the team even then in the mid 80s? So where did that sort of influence of always trying to find how to do things better, where did that come from?
Well, I believe in my life as a coach, I met two people basically to make it as simple as possible. You have the guys who have an intrinsic motivation and the extrinsic motivation. The intrinsic motivation is people who set themselves target. They have an internal need to push themselves. They're not necessarily happy people. They carry something that is a suffering inside them and dissatisfaction that transform into motivation. And their motivation comes from a desire to improve always and to set themselves target and analyze what they do. When you have people who have extrinsic motivation, they're basically people who are motivated by goals coming from outside. People say to them, you have to do so much in the game and you have to do it, they do it. But the motivation comes extrinsic, from outside, exterior. Or it is financial. If you do that, you will get a big bonus, you know. So there's many as well in the game who are like that, motivated by extrinsic factors. The most, those who go higher are, of course, the guys who have that intrinsic need, basically, to push themselves as far as they can. And I believe I had that because I wanted always to become better. And I'm not sure I always was successful in that, but I had that desire to understand better the world I live in and not only be based on my pure intuition. And I would say that science and the rational world can help you to understand better the world you live in.
And even at that early age, I suppose right throughout your career, it's been that you talk about defeat making you feel physically sick. I think even when you in that first team that you coached, Nancy, I think there was one time where you actually were sick on the way back from a game because you lost. Where did that come from? And that because that stayed with you throughout your entire, probably still now, isn't it?
Well, it was from a very young age. I couldn't take defeat very well. You know, we are all a mixture of desire to win and hate to lose. Some of us are a bit more desire to win. Usually the strikers are more the desire to win, the love for winning. The defenders are more hating to lose. And so I was maybe psychologically more a defender. And the defeat was at the start. Let's not forget, you know, I stopped at the age of 69. And I started at the age of 33 in the top league in France. And at the start, sometimes I felt I have to stop this job because I'm killing myself. I was physically sick. I had to throw up after defeat. And at the time, I was alone with the team. You had no assistant, no goalkeeper coach. You were you and the team. And your credibility came from your motivation and the quality of your training sessions, you know. And I had players who were older than I was when I started. And that demanded, of course, a huge commitment. But I adjusted slowly, adapted, because I started at a very young age. And but to take the defeat was always very difficult in my head and in my heart. And every big defeat is a scar in your heart forever.
And that never got easier, did it? Losing?
Sorry?
You never got used to losing throughout your whole career?
I got never used to it. And on the other hand, the manager who is a happy loser doesn't last a long time.
It's always nicer to interview a manager after they've won, I think. It's always a nice way of putting it. And one other thing that before we leave your sort of playing days behind, I think for those who didn't see you playing in the flesh, give us an idea of the sort of player we might see around about now who had a similar style to you. You called yourself a creative midfielder. What's a modern-day player that'd be a bit like Arsene Wenger in his prime?
No, well, let's say I scored a few goals. I don't know. I hope you don't find any video of me. I can tell you what I want, but...
Zinedine Zidane.
I was not Zinedine Zidane. Zinedine Zidane has one quality: no matter where the ball comes from, it's his friend. He's welcome. You know? Yeah. I was not that kind of player.
Okay.
But I was, I think, a genuine midfielder who was well balanced, offense, defense. I was not a creative at the top level, but I was quite good defender and decent passer of the ball. Had quite a normal vision of a game. not too bad. I don't know. Civil to.
I like the way you're
sign a
uncomfortable
contract with you.
talking about it. I love it. Let's talk a bit about Monaco, because when you moved to Monaco, you won the league in your first season there. Did that success feel at that early stage in your career? Did it feel like you expected it to feel, or did that give you a hunger to know I love this, I want more of this?
Yes, I would say as well. When you start in this job, you have to know that you can win. And the first win in your life is, of course, vital, because you think you belong to this world and you have a chance to be successful in it. I was 37 years of old, champion, won the championship in France with big teams there, Paris Saint-Germain, Marseille, Bordeaux were huge teams. And so we were a surprise package. And so I got stabilized Monaco as well in Europe. At the time, they had no history. They never passed the first round. So I was the longest serving manager in Monaco in the whole history of the club. I stayed for 7 years. And it was as well a bad period in France as well, because there was a lot of other things going on. But overall, I enjoyed my time, because at the time as well, Monaco was not a team in red and white. And we represented the prince. And there was a kind of class there that I recognized after when I came to Arsenal. The first time I came to Arsenal as a manager, I felt, my friend, it is something special there, that you smell when you go in Highbury, in the board, in the way people behave. And I was always conscious that you have to be at the level of the expectation.
And when you were at Monaco, you signed the likes of Glenn Hoddle when you were there. How aware were you of English football at that time? How much were you watching, and how aware of Arsenal were you at that point in your career?
When I was in
at Monaco, yeah.
Monaco, I met David Dean the 2nd of January, 1989. And then, of course, I followed Arsenal at the time. We couldn't watch them on television. But I looked at the results, called David sometimes, how are you doing? I said, how are you doing? And so we had connections. And I knew that George Graham was successful after when I went to Japan, 95. I had already met Mr. Peter Hillwood and David Dean in London on my way to Japan. And they tested me already to see if I was good enough to join up. And they went after for Bruce Rioch, and 1 year later they came to ask me to join Arsenal.
So that initial meeting, when they were sort of testing the water and finding out what you were like, was that exciting for you? Did you think, oh, this could be something I will do maybe later in my career?
Yes, I wanted to come to England. I came to England the first time to watch a football game was 82, 83. And it was a shock for me. I thought, what football has been created. It was really, honestly, it was an emotional shock. I went home and I thought, what am I doing in France? It's here that football is really alive, because it was at Liverpool. It was a game where you could feel the passion of the game. And what was very strong for me is that the supporters experienced the game really 100%. They tackled with the player. The corner was positive. Everything, they lived the game. And so I had that in my mind. If one day I can come here, I will do it.
One day I'll do it. And before we get to Arsenal, that time in Japan, again, when you write in the book, it's a really interesting, because we'll talk a little bit about more your relationship with the press as we sort of go through the evening. But is it right, in Japan, you didn't read any of the press? You weren't aware of what they were writing about?
It's not that I didn't read, I couldn't read.
You couldn't read, okay. Well, slightly different. But was that actually, in a strange way, was that actually a relief to not know what that discussion was on?
Yes, I didn't start well, because Nagoya was a burden of a J-League, they called them. And so I discovered the complete freedom when a journalist writes that you're useless. I did welcome him the next day with a smile because I couldn't read what he wrote. So I discovered a relationship with the press that was completely new to me. And I discovered as well a country that was willing to do well and had natural qualities to work hard and to work for each other. It has a natural team mentality. And I moved away a little bit away from the pressure that you have in Europe, and it refreshed me.
Having had that experience of watching football in the early 80s in the UK and wanting that, when that opportunity then came after Japan to come to Arsenal, talk to us about that excitement of getting that chance. Because at the time, everyone will remember the headlines of Arsene Who. I'm sure you remember those as well. What was that like, those first few days of trying to arrive, trying to make an impact, and trying to find a suit that fitted properly?
Well, I at the time, it's difficult to put that into perspective. Now it's 96, no social networks. I was already, quite successful. I was manager of a year in France, was manager of a year in Japan. I came to England and suddenly it's Arsene Who. And so I had to start from scratch again. And I could understand that and I accepted it. But of course, I could feel skepticism among the players. I inherited a team that was monocultural English guys, tough guys. You could go to a fight with them. The Adams, the Bold, the Keown, the Winterburn, the Dixon, the Seaman at the back. Just they told you, don't worry, we go on, we can fight.
We're in charge, yeah.
we are ready for the fight. They were a little bit on the old way of behavior.
Very, very diplomatic, Arsene. Yeah.
No, they were very good on the pitch, but they are very good at night off the pitch as well. But when you needed men, they were there. I had a huge respect for them and I discovered something when I encouraged them to play out from the back. They're a much better player than I thought at the start. And I tried to, of course, to bring my own training sessions were based more on mobility, technical qualities, but as well to give them a new way of life to prepare for the game. They were skeptical, I must say, because you don't suppress the beers and the wine without getting any skepticism, but they were clever, intelligent. But in 96, this team was a very sensitive team for me because they were all around 30. I had 9 players who were 30 or over. So I knew at some stage I will have to tell all these guys that it's over, and that is very difficult when you're manager, because when you have so many players of the same age, they stick together. And I pushed them as far as I could, and they were clever enough because 96 was the change of the television money. For them, they had not made much money before, but from 30 to 35, they earned a good living. So that helped me a lot to change their style of life.
I'm sure I know you're very good with dates. I don't know how many people here tonight and those watching online are aware that this is actually an anniversary, isn't it? The 12th of October.
12th of October, yeah.
For those that don't know, explain, Arsene. This
12th of October was the first game we played at Blackburn, and I think we won 2-0. And Ian Wright scored.
Yeah, I should confess, I spoke to a couple of Arsene's former players at Arsenal in preparation for this. Some of them have sent in some questions, and Wrighty did mention asking about the first game because I think he remembers.
What was funny on the way to the game, the players chanted, "I suppressed the chocolate, the Mars bars, and all that." And on the way to the stadium, the players chanted at the back of the coach, "We want our Mars bars." And I said to Gary Lund, "What are they chanting there?" I said, "They want the Mars bars." Said, So
I would imagine Righty was involved in that, I would imagine, yeah?
at half time, we were 1-0 up, I think, and nobody said a word. Usually I let the players come in, calm down, they speak, they talk with the physio. Nobody said a word. And I said to the physio, "What's going on there?" He said, "They're hungry."
Very good. I mean, I know it's a funny story, and they'll probably laugh about it as well. But changing that culture, how big a battle was that? About the fizzy drinks, about the Mars bars, about some of the drinking that went on after the match?
I don't know how much, but our job is about marginal gains, and maybe at the time they prepared better. They were conscious that they stretched more. They ate better. We had lunch together every day at the time at the Sopwell Hotel, because we decided to build a new training center. And these players were exceptional characters, They were not educated in today's soft academy support. They came from tough football that you have to play, many of them in a championship. So when they got up to that level, they were ready for a fight, these guys.
And willing to do it on occasions. I also spoke to Martin Keown today, Arsene. I asked Martin for one question. He gave me 25. And it was about an hour on the phone. But he had a very interesting point. He told me, I've spoken to him at length about the influence that you had on him individually, and talking about, extending his career as well. He was really interested to know, and he said, we as players learnt an awful lot from you as a manager. What did you as a manager learn from us, he said, as players?
What I learned that the importance of a character in the game, It is because when you're a manager, you have to cope with uncertainty. You make decisions and you have to accept the uncertainty of your decisions and to be convinced that it's the right one, but no, as well, you can go wrong. And when you have a character, when you had this team with such a strong character, when I say character, it's not personality. That is something that is based on courage, honesty, integrity, honor, and this generation had that, What I learned from them, is how important it is in a success. And I felt as well that this generation, they did fight for a good contract, and it was not easy to get them to agree. But once they had signed, they were happy to play for the club and to fight for the club, And so this is a generation where there was less movement. When you played Man United, they were Man United for life. The players, Liverpool, they were Liverpool for life, And this rapport created a big fighting games as well, because these players, they were ready to fight for their club.
I'm sure everybody remembers those fantastic encounters, and we'll get onto that rivalry with Manchester United a bit later on. But from you said, you said Arsene, who those headlines, and within 2 years you'd won the double, and with this side of, as you said, some aging players in there. We'll talk a bit about the transition and the players that you brought in, but that must have been a real vindication of your methods, of what you were trying to do. The fact that you'd taken this Arsenal side, who were up against some fantastic teams at that time in English football, you'd taken them to the very top.
Yes, because Man United was a dominating force at the time, and of course you had Newcastle, don't forget it, a very strong team as well. And Liverpool, of course, you had always Tottenham, and
Is he allowed one mention throughout the day? Okay.
We won the championship '98 with this generation, plus players are brought in like Patrick Vieira and the main players, and Marco Overmars, And they were exceptional football players. I knew Patrick from Cannes when he started to play against Monaco when I was manager. Straight away after the game, I thought, this guy is 17 years old, he'd be a great player. And Marco Overmars, I loved him for a long time before, but he had a bad cruciate knee ligament injury, and they told me in Holland that he would never come back. But I took a gamble to bring him.